Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
But that good morning salutation here at 83 Weeks takes on a different tone and power at 6 a.m. It's 6 a.m. here Mountain Time as we're recording this. We're not only getting the worm, we're crushing the worm. We're so early. I love it.
Well, we're excited to be with you today. We're doing a fun watch along from way back when, 25 years ago. Join us to watch Raw, July 26th, 1999. Fire up your Peacock. That's season 7, episode 30. Monday Night Raw, July 26th, 1999. Season 7, episode 30. Here's where we are in the Monday Night Wars on July 26th. Nitro gets a 3.4. How many people do you think that would have been, Eric? 3.4 back in 1999.
Roughly about 5 million.
And Monday Night Raw got a 7.1. So we're going to be watching that episode. Goodness.
Roughly about 8.5 million.
So you think there's more than 13 million people watching this day?
According to Nielsen, there was.
Isn't that crazy?
I know, right? It's hard to believe.
Fired up, July 26, 1999, Monday Night Raw. It's season 7, episode 30. I'm ready for the playback on my side. Are you ready on your side, Eric?
Bring it.
Here we go. In 3, 2, 1, play. We should mention that just a few days prior to this, Jesse Ventura, who was the governor of Minnesota at the time, was announced as being involved in SummerSlam 99. Of course, he's going to be the guest referee for the triple threat between Steve Austin, Triple H, and Mankind. Were you keeping up with and actually watching the WWF product at all in 1999, or is somebody just giving you reports?
No, I would get reports. There were people in my office that watched it religiously. Zane Bresloff being one of them. Although Zane wasn't ever in the office, he lived in Denver, but we spoke 20 times a day for about 45 seconds at a time. But between Zane and others in my office, obviously Kevin Sullivan, Terry Taylor, people on the creative team, but do a pretty good job keeping me up to speed.
So, do you have a reaction when you find out that? I mean, I know you have your own history with Jesse Ventura, but to find out he's working with Vince McMahon after all those years, that felt like an impossibility. And now he's got a little bit of notoriety, and all of a sudden Vince is letting bygones be bygones. Were you shocked to hear that Jesse was doing something with Vince after all this time?
More so that Jesse stepped back into WWE. I mean, I had kind of come to expect that from Vince and had learned that when it comes to emotion, Vince is all business. It either works or it doesn't work. And if it works, regardless of history, as we've seen, including my involvement there, nothing matters if it makes sense. So it didn't surprise me that Vince would make the move. It did surprise me with Jesse because Jesse was so outspoken, and I have had and still have a certain impression of Jesse based on the public persona that we see. And it seemed a little bit unusual for Jesse, but I didn't think about it a whole lot. Jesse's always been one of my favorite color analysts. I used to love watching him in AWA. I was a huge fan in AWA, huge fan. Really loved Jesse and his work, and really liked him even more as Vince's color partner in WWF. Thought he did a great job.
I want to ask you about some other news and notes from this time. There was a report in the Observer that Arn Anderson was planned to return to the ring on July 22nd. It was a Thunder taping in Moline, Illinois. And Dave would comment, although you know how WCW plans are, we know ultimately Arn did not return to the ring. I mean, I guess he did for a couple of 1 or 2 minute affairs with David Flair in the year 2000. But he finishes up in January of 97. That's his last real match. I was shocked to see there was even a byline about Arn here in the Observer as far as an in-ring return in 99. Do you remember Arn trying to make a go of this, or perhaps did Dave get this wrong?
Well, I don't know what he said, so it's hard for me to determine whether he got it wrong or not, but I don't remember Arn wanting to make a comeback. I would have been aware of it because I was the one that was pretty adamant about Arn getting out of wrestling and not trying to work his way back in and taking a job as an agent.
It's written at the time politically backstage. Although it's not official, it's pretty clear that Nash's power is diminishing, and the people doing most of the TV writing and formatting are Bischoff, who's heavily influenced by Hogan and Dusty Rhodes. This is July of 99, so we're on the downhill slope for your exit. Do you remember Dusty and yourself working more closely creatively?
No, that that wasn't true. I mean, Dusty and I, throughout our relationship, worked closely together for periods of time, and then for periods of time we wouldn't, and then we would drift back again. And it's almost like I mean, I don't think there was a conscious thought or plan, at least on my part, but it's almost like Dusty and I would work together. We'd hit a certain vibe, and everything is rolling. And it's almost like we got creatively not tired of each other, but we didn't feed each other quite the same way. So we take a little break. It was never like anything hostile or negative or tense or anything like that. It's just okay. We'd stop collaborating for a while and then we'd come back. So that was pretty consistent with Dusty throughout my relationship with him. So I don't know what Dave's talking about. Probably neither does Dave.
It was mentioned in this era too that Goldberg had renegotiated his contract and he'd gotten a raise to $1.5 million per year. And Dave would comment, the WWF was salivating, and that may be too weak of a term, hoping Goldberg would somehow extricate himself from WCW and they could promote Austin versus Goldberg. There were plans on the table and everything. Were you surprised to hear that the WWF was itching to get Goldberg? Is that ultimately why you renegotiated the contract?
Well, we renegotiated his contract because obviously we were in a very, very competitive environment, and on the on the uncomfortable end of that competitive environment, and we had spent so much time and money and intellectual capital when it comes to intellectual property. We built him up to such a high degree that it almost worked against us. And I will want to say, and I'm friendly with Bill. We've got a great relationship, tons of respect for him. But Bill forced a renegotiation about a year or a year and a half before he was due. He really forced it at a time that was incredibly difficult for WCW, with all the things going on that we know about because of Guy Evans' book and Seven Bucks Productions, Who Killed WCW series on Dark Side. We know a lot more than we knew then, but yeah, let it go with that.
We're watching a Monday Night Raw here where we started Taker whooping X-Pac backstage. Eventually, Road Dogg tries to make the save. That doesn't work. Kane tries to make the save. That doesn't work. And now it's Big Show and The Undertaker. They've got some sort of alliance going here.
What time code are you? What time code are you at, bud?
I'm at 7:05.
Okay.
We're watching July 26, 1999, just to understand how in the world the WWE got a 7.1 that night. Nitro was up from the prior week. They went from a 3.3 to a 3.4. 3.4, still pretty damn strong, but goodness gracious, 7.1 on the other channel, and that's what we're watching as we see the long black limousine show up. Of course, as you might imagine, it's Vince McMahon on the inside. I do want to ask you about some other news and notes on the WCW side of thing, though, because we heard that Dennis Rodman was actually going to be coming back. And allegedly, according to Dave Meltzer, this may have been because he filed a lawsuit against WCW because he felt like he'd been deceived out of another $550,000 that was due to him. And of course, a lot of people would say, well, maybe they didn't pay it because he showed up in no condition to perform at the doggone pay-per-view. But the reality is he's going to get another deal here at Road Wild, according to Dave Meltzer, for the same $1.5 million base, plus a percentage of revenues above 3.9. Of course, maybe jokes on Dennis because WCW is not nearly in the condition they were a year prior. Was this true? Was there a legal dust up with Turner and Dennis Rodman?
I think there was a question on accounting because a lot of Dennis's agreement, a substantial portion of it was incentive based, and there were a lot of different formulas. And it's a very complicated process. It's not unusual for talent who hadn't been involved in the typical pay-per-view accounting process and timeline to get really frustrated with it because it took forever. It really took a little over a year for numbers to finally become finalized. And for talent who's never dealt with it before, it got confusing and frustrating. And I think that was the issue. It wasn't a personal issue between Dennis or me or Hulk or talent. It wasn't a creative issue. It wasn't, a performance-based issue or whether or not, Dennis was in shape to work or not. None of that stuff. It was simply an accounting issue. And it cleared itself up very quickly, by the way.
Speaking of accounting, I want to ask you about this. It's written in the Observer that Kiss was going to be receiving $500,000, $500,000 to perform 2 songs on Nitro and then have Gene introduce a new wrestler, the Kiss Demon. And this is all supposed to happen on August 23rd. Does that sound right? Half a mil for 2 songs?
No, it was $250,000, and it was part of a much larger program and package that was to launch an entire line of Kiss / WCW related merchandise and characters, as well as a lot of other things that we had talked about, animation projects and things like that. So it was 250 for Nitro, which, by the way, if in the big scheme of things, it was a bargain, if you will. But it was part of a much larger plan. It wasn't an isolated decision. It was part of a broader decision.
There's another note that makes the Observer. WCW will get 4 TV guide covers on August 15th, which will be Sting, Kevin Nash, Randy Savage, and the Nitro Girls. And Meltzer would say the 2 that would actually sell are Hogan and Goldberg. Talk to me about this relationship with TV Guide. I know this is from a bygone era, but people don't really think about this, but more copies of that were sold than just about any other periodical. I think that's probably safe to say. So if you're on the cover of that, it's huge exposure, but I am curious, how do you go about selecting who's on those covers? Is that a request from TV Guide or does that come from WCW?
TV Guide. I don't know exactly how. I don't know who called who first. I wasn't involved in any of that. That would have been more than likely Sharon Sadello, quite possibly Mike Weber, and maybe even Alan Sharp. Alan Sharp was our head of PR. Really good guy. Very, very, very good at his job, by the way. Can't say enough good things about Alan Sharp. Got run over by a tank in his sleep. He was sleeping in a foxhole, cutting Z's in the middle of the desert. The tank ran over him. Nothing. Kept on doing his army stuff. Tank ran over him. Anyway, could have been Alan if it was a PR move, but typically it would involve, okay, when is TV Guide going to come out? Because they typically would plan 3 months out, 6 months out. It wasn't like they were coming up with ideas every other day. They did have a plan. So they would tell us when the magazine was going to come out or when TV Guide was going to come out, what episodes or editions, I should say. And then we would try to project who would be the best focus at that time. So if we knew it was going to be Sting and Scott Hall, for example, in a match, then at Halloween Havoc, for example, one of our tentpole pay-per-views, then one or both of those individuals would go high up on the list. So a lot of it just depended on what we planned on creatively.
Let's talk a little bit about the television contract at the time. It's written here that WCW Worldwide would soon start on Channel 5 in the United Kingdom, which would be the strongest station to carry wrestling in many years and a strong 7 p.m. Friday night time slot. Who on your team, whether it's WCW or Turner Corporate, who would have been trying to expand international television like this?
Like so many things at Turner, it would have been a little bifurcated, meaning you had Turner Home Entertainment, Stu Snyder's group, is technically the agent of WCW content when it comes to international distribution, television or otherwise, and home video. All of that fell under Turner Home Entertainment. So Turner Home Entertainment would theoretically lead the charge and be out there knocking on doors trying to sell the product internationally, whether it be to the UK, Channel 5, or anywhere else. But they would work very closely with Sharon Sadello, probably, or Mike Weber, possibly, because although Turner Home Entertainment knew the players internationally, they knew who the buyers were. They didn't know anything at all about the product. So Sharon or Mike or somebody from WCW would kind of backfill and get involved to whatever extent necessary when a little bit more background and experience in professional wrestling or WCW was needed.
Let's talk about Hulk Hogan making an appearance here on WCW Live. It's really the OG of wrestling podcasting.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to go on WCW Live and tell a story about Pat Patterson. I wasn't there. It's not worth even reporting what was reported there. Did you ever have a conversation of that sort with Hulk Hogan about Pat Patterson?
Well, I don't know what the interview was, so I don't know.
Well, it wasn't positive.
That sounds weird because my conversations with Hulk over the years has always been pretty positive when it came to Pat. Obviously there was controversy there, and we have talked about that, but never dwelt on it. And I've never heard. I don't think I've heard anybody talk negatively about Pat, especially Hulk.
That's the thing. All due respect to Hulk Hogan, we also know that, man, he's a natural born entertainer. So sometimes if the red light's on and the cameras are rolling, he's going to try to do an entertaining interview for you, brother. So,
well, I mean, that's not a little thing. I mean, Conrad, you're not only right, but people have no idea how right you are. When you have, and Hulk's a great example. I think Ric Flair's another one.
Yes.
And there are others that we know. But when, wrestling is so weird. It's not like being an actor. Tom Cruise doesn't stay in character, for his Top Gun series out in public, right? Or maybe he does. I don't know. I don't know Tom Cruise. My point is, a lot of, actors, they're in character. Everybody knows that they're acting. They're not really that character. But wrestling, for some reason, is such it's a unique thing. And people forget, including the talent themselves. They sometimes forget where the character starts and the real person ends, or vice versa. Especially guys like Hulk and Rick, who get excited about doing their promos. You saw it on the Republican National Convention. Yeah. I saw it with Hulk because I've worked with him so closely and I know him so well when it comes to this stuff. He wanted to present Hulk Hogan and Terry Bollea. And that lasted for about 7 seconds. He couldn't help himself because he was having so much fun being in that character. And a lot of times that same type of thing will happen to Ric Flair, to Hulk Hogan, or just anybody else, that's out there. And, you slip into the character a little bit because that's what people want. They don't want to hear from the person. They want to hear from the character they see on TV, and you want to give them what they want. But oftentimes in the process, your interview kind of swims back and forth between a real interview and a character interview.
I mean, I watched that RNC thing with Hulk Hogan, and he darn sure did say something along the lines of, okay, I'm talking to you as Terry Bollea now. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. So I'm press slamming this stinky, nasty 500-pound giant. It's like, so Terry Bollea is press slamming the
You
big
know,
thing.
we didn't talk about that much. You know, we acknowledged that it was going to happen the day that it happened, of course, because we hadn't seen it yet. But I'm so proud of, and I didn't have anything to do with it, so I guess proud for isn't the right word.
Yeah, proud for, not proud
I'm
of.
proud
You're right.
for him, you know, because I've known Terry Bollea for a long time, 30 some odd years. And I know there are other people that probably know him differently. In some cases, maybe know him better than I do in certain ways. But I've known this guy who has, when I say struggled with his faith, faith has always been important to Terry Bollea. It's always been a big part of his consciousness and awareness. But like all of us, you know, lifestyle choices, um, the people we surround ourselves with, and the things that we allow ourselves to get interested in, all of that stuff can kind of separate you from your faith in a way. It has me throughout my entire life. And over the last few years, I've had different kinds of conversations with Terry Bollea, and each time I feel like he's getting closer and closer and closer to being at peace and eliminating those things that really prevented him from embracing his faith as much as he has. And he certainly has over the last couple of years, and even more so. And what's so exciting for me is I can see it in his eyes. Regardless of whether he's in character or out of character, I can see in his eyes that he's happier than he's been since I've known him. He's genuinely happy because I think he's finally reconciled. I think Terry Bollea finally defeated Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was winning that fight for a long time. And I think now Terry Bollea is the champion. He embraces Hulk Hogan. I think he loves that Hulk Hogan character. It will always be a part of his life. But there's a different Terry Bollea walking around right now than the one that I've known for the past 30 years. And I'm happy for him.
Could he have asked for better cross promotion for his new Real American beer? I mean, to come out with the Real American theme song and tear that shirt off in
You know,
front of,
it's like, how many times have you and I said, you know, you can come up with the best idea in the world, but if the timing isn't right,
yeah.
or you can kind of come up with, yeah, it's an okay idea, but if the timing is perfect, this is one of those, the timing is perfect. I mean, it's awesome.
Super happy for Hulk to have this much of a mainstream opportunity and another act. And I'm excited to see what he does with Real American beer. I mean, you couldn't have asked for better cross promotion than that appearance. We're watching a very interesting Monday Night Raw. We're seeing yet again another shot of Vince McMahon in the backstage areas. Let's talk a little bit about some news and notes from the WCW side of things and the Observer. They've talked with Disco Inferno about taking a bump on his head and doing an insomnia gimmick where he thinks he's one of the more established stars like Hulk Hogan and Randy Savage. And he does promos where he's upset at Benoit and Malenko for thinking they can take the main event spots from people like him and Hogan. That's hilarious. Do you remember hearing this creative?
I, I, I don't remember hearing it, and I don't know where it came from, but it's funny as hell. And
I
Disco would
love
be
it.
great, you know, because you need some comedy. You need something fun. It can't all be intense and serious and dark and foreboding all the time. You need to break it up a little bit. And Disco was one of the best at that type of a character. I don't know why we didn't do it, but we should have.
Let's talk about Dave Finley here. He's going to wound up, well, in a bad spot. He's going to go through a table, and part of the metal underneath the table is going to slice his leg to the point where you can actually see the bone through the skin. This happens in July in Jackson, Mississippi. Actually, the day before this Monday Nitro here, there's a live event in Jackson. And this talked about pretty immediately based on the amount of blood and just the severity and the location. Hey, this could be a career-ending injury. What do you remember of this? I mean, this is the side of a table spot nobody talks about.
I remember, obviously, I got the report. I don't know who gave it to me. Probably Jenny Engel, most likely. And then I think the very next day, which would have been at TV, I got more detail from people that were there. And to me, it sounded like he's not coming back from that. I mean, there were tendons involved, and I mean, ligaments, and it was ugly. It was very ugly. And I remember, I think it was Terry Taylor, excuse me, describing how it happened and all that. And it wasn't a situation where anybody was to blame or nobody prepped the table properly or that I'm aware of at this stage. But I did remember hearing how bad it was, and pretty much being under the impression that Dave wasn't going to be able to make it back.
Let's talk a little bit about Conan. He's going to run into some legal trouble here. He actually gets arrested at the airport, and he was coming off an injury where he had gotten injured in a WCW match, and now he's got some legal woes. You saw a few guys have some legal woes when they were in WCW, whether it was Scott Steiner or the Big Show or Scott Hall, or I mean, it happened a few times, even once with Mr. Regal. When it happens with Conan here, what's the policy? What's the procedure like with Turner in Flux?
You know, what was the procedure like? There was no standard operating procedure. Every case was unique. Every situation was unique. For the most part, though, we didn't react to too much of anything, unless it was bodily injury, somebody was hurt, severe laws were broken, things like that. Then we might possibly make a statement or come out in front of it, but typically we didn't, and stayed away from it unless there was a conviction.
So do you, in times like this, when you know that one of the talent have had a legal issue, do you pick up the phone and have a conversation about it, or do you just wait and let it play out? Okay.
I don't. Maybe Kevin Sullivan, possibly Terry Taylor, somebody from the office would, but it would not have been me.
Well, I was going to ask, is there a different protocol when it's someone like a Conan? Because we've heard for years that he was sort of the liaison for a whole country. And even though he's not technically office, that feels like he's wearing both hats at different times just because he's that liaison in my off base.
No, you're 100% right. It was it was a unique position. It was very difficult. It was difficult on Conan. It was difficult on us. Because Conan, love him to death now. We're tight as fuck now. But there was a point in time when I was watching Conan pretty closely because he was wearing two hats and he wore them very, very well.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason that Conan was able to have that opportunity is because he understood how to speak two languages. That's really it. And the best way to learn a new language is immersion. Living where the language is spoken and using it every day, that's the best way. But if that's not in the cards this year, you can still learn the language the second best way, and that is with Babbel. I'm such a big fan of Babbel. 1 in 5 Americans have learn a new language on their bucket list, and if that's you, 2024 can be the year that you check it off the list with Babbel. Be a better version of you in 2024 with science-backed language learning app that actually works. Don't pay hundreds of dollars for private tutors or waste hours on apps that don't really help you speak the language. Babbel's quick 10-minute lessons are handcrafted by over 200 language experts to help you start speaking a new language in as little as just 3 weeks. Babbel's designed by real people for real conversations. Babbel's tips and tools are approachable, accessible, rooted in real-life situations, and delivered with conversation-based teaching, so you're ready to practice what you've learned in the real world. And that was the big difference for me. I've been trying to learn Spanish. I think it would be fun to go see some Lucha Libre and be able to understand exactly what in the heck's going on. Studies from Yale, Michigan State University, and others continue to prove that Babbel is just better. One study found that using Babbel for just 15 hours is the equivalent to a full semester of college. Babbel has over 16 million subscriptions sold. Plus, all of Babbel's 14 award-winning language courses are backed by their 20-day money-back guarantee. And here's a very special limited-time deal for our listeners. Right now, you get up to 60% off your Babbel subscription, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/weeks. Get up to 60% off at babbel.com/weeks. That's BABBEL.com/weeks. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Hey, you know what else is cool about Babbel? One of the big advantages for me is I learned enough Japanese so that when I go to a sushi bar, I sound like I'm almost native born. Like I can conduct a sushi related conversation. What's fresh today? What would you recommend? Oh, that yellowtail looks good. When did it come in? Where may I find the restroom? And of course, the ever popular Ippon biru kudasai, which is bring me another beer, please. When you can learn just enough Japanese so that you're comfortable sitting at a sushi bar and you strike up a conversation with a sushi chef. Now, a lot of this is assuming that the sushi chef is Japanese, because if the sushi chef is, say, from, I don't know, Cancun, then this formula won't work. But if you, like me, seek out Japanese family-owned restaurants because they're always the best, and you happen to luck across a native Japanese sushi chef, and then you sit down and confidently carry on a casual conversation about the fish. Don't get into politics or weather. Just talk fish. And when you can get through enough to impress your new host, the quality of the fish that's coming your way and the surprise things you didn't even order will make you so glad that you subscribe to Babbel and that you heard this conversation, because it will change your life. As mine, living proof.
Babbel.com/weeks. That's BABBEL.com/weeks. And we're watching a big reason that the WWF has been enjoying so much success. It's an in-ring promo with the BMF himself, Stone Cold Steve Austin, and Mr. McMahon. These guys maybe are the most prolific feud in the history of wrestling. Wouldn't you agree?
Certainly one of the most meaningful ones. I think everybody has opinions, and a lot of them are valid. They're just different perspectives. There's no right or wrong. It's just different perspectives. You're looking at different moments in time from different angles, and consequently, you see things differently. But I think there was one moment, there was one creative decision, there was one point in time when everything kind of fell into place, almost so much so that it almost looked like it was by design. But I think a lot of it was just default, good luck timing and things like that. But when they brought in Tyson and set up the Tyson Austin McMahon, Mr. McMahon feud, used Tyson to do that flashpoint, that moment in time, that story, that angle, that moment probably had more to do with the success we see in WWE today than anything else you can point to. Anything else you can point to. That one moment, that decision, because that really, in my opinion, was the moment that WWE abandoned their previous business model, the teen and preteen model. That moment was the manifestation of a speech, I believe, that Vince McMahon gave in November, talking about the new direction of WWE and the new type of storytelling, which he was foreshadowing the Attitude Era, which was a reaction to Nitro. But the way they did it, the way that story was created, the way it was executed in particular, that story has more to do with the success of WWE today than any other single moment that I can think of.
Let's keep everybody abreast of what we're watching on the watch along. Vince McMahon just stomped to the top of the ramp, turned back to Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's still in the ring, and hit him with the double bird. This isn't Stone Cold flipping off Mr. McMahon. It's Mr. McMahon flipping off Stone Cold. It feels like Vince is having a blast here. Would you agree with that?
Oh, will the real Vince McMahon please step forward, pal? Yeah, you think after all that time behind the desk pretending he was a color commentator and, golly gee, I can't believe he did that. And now to be able to come out and be who he really is or was, that the Mr. McMahon character was Vince McMahon with the volume turned up. How many times have we talked about that? Stone Cold Steve Austin is Steve Williams with the volume turned up. It's when you find those characters that resonate and all you have to do is allow them to be themselves a bit bigger and louder. That's so much fun. And that's where Vince McMahon was. He was probably having more fun in those few moments when he first came out as Mr. McMahon than he probably had in his entire career up to that point.
Let's talk a little bit about the No Limit Soldiers. It's written here, Master P is officially gone. Conan and Mysterio have been pulled out of the No Limit Soldiers, which will now become a jobber group. There's been some attempt to pull Brad Armstrong out of the Soldiers and group him with Mysterio, Conan, and Eddie. But since they got hot as a team in Moline, that won't happen as quickly. Talk to me about that. What do you remember about throwing in the towel with Master P? And was this really maybe the last opportunity for Brad Armstrong to have some mainstream success?
Well, I think it certainly could be considered one of Brad's last opportunities for sure, because it started out, hopeful. It was very high profile. It could have been special. But it didn't live up to anybody's expectations, including Master P's, including ours. So it wasn't from what I remember, at least, it wasn't a hostile separation. There was no, I don't think there was much legal back and forth. I think it was a pretty clean break from what I remember. But I think it could, fair statement about Brad. I don't know that he had any other really high profile opportunities from this point forward.
I mean, he does have a little bit here and there. I mean, you guys even let him pick up a win on a Halloween Havoc, which seems crazy, but he beat Berlin at Halloween Havoc that year. But it does feel like we were trying something for the first time in a while with Scott. With Brad. Let's talk a little bit about where we are ratings wise. It's written here that you had to be shocked when you saw the Tuesday or the ratings come in the prior Tuesday, because it was Hogan and Sid in the main event of Nitro. Meanwhile, it was The Undertaker and Triple H on Monday Night Raw. And as we've mentioned, well, they've been on quite a tear. Nitro did a 3.3 that week. Raw did a 6.3. But the overrun would top a 7. And Hogan is doing radio. Maybe he's doing a bit. And he says, well, it was Malenko, Benoit, Perry Saturn, and Shane Douglas that brought the rating down. And then I had to make up for lost ground. And of course, that gets covered in the newsletters, and they're trying to do all their fact checking. Whenever I would see that Hogan did an interview like that, it sounded to me, I know a lot of people would say, oh, he's throwing those guys under the bus. It sounds to me like he's just trying to set up future angles and storylines and matches. I just don't see him being a guy to just throw somebody under the bus like that. Am I way off base?
No, you're not. You're right on the money. Now, he's capable of cracking a stupid joke that falls wrong, just like all of us are every day. But there's no malicious intent. There was never. He's the opposite. That's what drives me crazy and why I probably over defend at times, because if you really know the guy, first of all, he's generous as hell to a fault. He would not hurt a fly. Like, if there's a spider crawling across his deck, he won't step on it. He's about as gentle of a human being as I've ever met. He'll stand up for himself. He's not going to let anybody push him around, but he is a very, very gentle soul who doesn't really like confrontation at all. At all. But it's so different than what people perceive him to be. But yeah, part of it is what we talked about before, slipping in and out of character, sometimes, you know, challenging your relationship to reality along the way as a result. All of that kind of adds to it. But in his heart, he's a nice guy. There's not a malicious bone in his body. He's gentle and he's generous. But you would never know that unless, you actually get to know him.
Let's talk a little bit about developmental for WCW. In this era, this is an interesting signing. Dean Roll, who was from the Ohio area, and we've fallen in love with him as an internet wrestling community under his persona Shark Boy. He's a cult favorite here, and he actually winds up signing a developmental deal with WCW in 1999. And of course, it's written in the Observer, he's going to be headed to the power plant. And there's been some criticism of the WCW developmental program compared to the WWF's. Instead of working in the ring, it seems Buddy Lee Parker is like having a boot camp instructor who gets guys into great condition, and they don't learn in-ring wrestling enough. So you see these Chase Tatum and Chip Minton looking characters who look like $1 million, and after years of training can't even do an acceptable television squash match. Pretty strong words from Dave Meltzer there in the Observer. What did you think of the power plant, Buddy Lee Parker, and lastly, Shark Boy?
Don't have a lot of recall on Shark Boy. Just power plant wasn't high on my list of things to pay attention to in '99. Not that it shouldn't have been, by the way, but nonetheless, it was what it was. I think the overall feeling was it was the best we had. That was always, developing talent was always such a big topic of conversation consistently. Sometimes it got bigger depending on who had a voice. When Ole Anderson was there, right after I was made executive producer, that's all Ole ever talked about was where are we going to get talent from? Where are we going to get talent from? And Ole talked extensively about how the power plant was a part of the solution, but not the solution. And I think everybody agreed with Ole's take on that. It was a part of a solution, but not a complete solution. The complete solution, a consensus being that would involve talent, yes, learning the basics, the fundamentals of what goes on inside of the ring and how to tell a story. But that training alone, without the ability to go out and do it in front of people so that you can learn how to interpret the audience's reaction, or you can learn how to control the audience's reaction even more so. Those are things that you can't learn in a power plant, in a training facility, or even necessarily in front of a crowd that isn't representative of what you would typically find as a crowd at a wrestling live event or television show. Meaning TNA, the Impact Zone, WCW, worldwide tapings in Disney MGM and at Universal. Functionally, yeah, we're able to crank out shows, but those shows just aren't going to resonate and connect with the audience in large part, in some part. No, in large part, but in such subtle ways that's not obvious to people. It's because that crowd is not a typical crowd. It doesn't feel like a sporting event when you're watching at home. It feels like a game show with wrestling. And people that absolutely love wrestling, no big deal, right? You don't care. But that's a small percentage of the audience. The larger percent of the audience wants to look at wrestling like they look at other live sports and just escape and have fun. And you don't get that with a studio audience. So even NXT, as great as they're doing in so many respects, that audience, while it may feel more typical than a lot of other audiences, it still has that soundstage vibe to it. And that's the part that's missing. That's the part where I think you'll see the Jake Cargills spending a lot more time learning that transition. Braun Breaker, look at how much time they're taking with Braun Breaker. They're really giving him a lot of time. And I think the time that they're giving him It's not because he needs to learn how to, he doesn't need, everybody can always improve mechanics. Okay. I'm not saying that, but that's not where he needs work right now. Where he needs work right now is the experience so that he can time his emotions, so that he can start planning on manipulating the crowd instead of reacting to a crowd. Sorry, went into the weeds. It's one of my favorite topics. I can't help myself.
We like when you go in the weeds. The whole idea of the power plant has been pretty controversial through the years. You know, we've heard from guys like Dave Bautista, who says that he was excited to be a professional wrestler and came down here and worked at it in the power plant and ultimately got ran off. He enjoyed success later, we know. And even Chael Sonnen, who's gone on to become an MMA superstar and made over $8 million fighting Anderson Silva in the rematch once. I mean, a real successful talking head, cut wrestling promos in his MMA career to draw money kind of guy. Tried his hand at the power plant and got ran off. It does feel like, with the benefit of hindsight, man, that was a great opportunity. A couple opportunities missed.
Yeah, it was. And like I said, it wasn't for everybody. And I think there was a little bit too much of an emphasis on, I don't know, I'm going to take that back. One of the aspects of the power plant that people took pride in was getting the respect of the people that came through it. And I think in order to accomplish that, too much emphasis was put on the boot camp mentality.
Yeah.
I just talked to a guy the other day. Where was I? I can't remember where I was. I must have been in Atlantic City. I'm talking to this guy. Oh, no, it was a phone call. It was one of my ad-free shows calls I made. And I'm talking to this guy, Ernie. I'm talking to Ernie. He goes, oh, I want you to talk to my friend. So I talked to his friend, right? They were together. And his friend said, yeah, I just want you to know I spent $5,000 plus a plane ticket. And I stayed in a hotel because I wanted to work out at the power plant. I wanted to become a wrestler. You guys charged me $5,000. And I didn't last a day. I quit. I said, well, did we give you your money back? He goes, no, and I don't want it back. That's not why I'm calling. So he was proud of the fact that he didn't make it through Sergeant Buddy Lee Parker's version of a frat challenge. But yeah, it was pretty tough. And I think probably a little too tough.
It is interesting to think how it's all sort of evolved over the years and how, you know, the way to get into wrestling has changed. If you were a young and up and coming aspiring athlete who wants to become a star in professional wrestling, and you were starting that journey in 2024, what would you do or recommend, Eric?
I think NXT is about as close as you're going to get to a system from top to bottom that's going to produce a talent that has the potential of making a living in professional wrestling. There are other ways. I'm just not as familiar with them. But if my son or daughter came to me at 20 years old or so and says, hey, I really want to do this, how should I do it? I would point them to WWE. Not that it's the only way. Again, there are other ways. Some may say better. But from beginning to middle to end, I think that's the best opportunity.
We're talking over a Triple H and Chyna promo. Triple H is stomping around, cutting a promo in the middle of the ring. We see Stone Cold walking or watching in the backstage area. Let's talk about where we are live event wise in WCW. I mean, the year 1999 should be studied in a major way. Here's what's written in the Observer. Shows this past week were WCW Saturday night taping on July 20th in Madison, Wisconsin. It drew 1,655 fans. That's 4,464, and the building was papered like crazy for $33,117. Here we are doing a television taping, Eric. Granted, it's WCW Saturday night, so it is very much a C show, but it only draws 1,600 fans. Does that seem crazy to you?
No. When you think about it, I mean, WCW Saturday Night, which was the A show for such a long time, has at this point in time been relegated to about a D show. So, in light of that, in light of the revenue that it was generating for WCW, in light of the expenses that were associated with that particular show, and the difficulty that we had with it, simply because Nitro had completely changed everything in WCW, including viewing habits. It just wasn't that important of a show. It's kind of like, Collision, I guess, or a B show, a C show, a D show in some cases. You just can't afford to put the resources into secondary type of content because you're not going to get the revenue from it. It's just not going to, there's no return on an investment.
It feels like maybe it's a Ring of Honor taping. There's 16 matches on the show. And here's the card that night. This is a WCW Saturday night taping here. Madison, Wisconsin, Dane County Expo Center, 1,655 paying fans. Ernest Miller over Lash LaRue, Scotty Riggs over Scott Putski, The Disciple over The Gambler, Vampiro over Psychosis, Mikey Whipwreck over Viano number 5, Eddie Guerrero over Adrian Beard, Jerry Flynn and Hugh Morris over Disorderly Conduct, Van Hammer over Mike Enos, Prince Iaukea over Evan Courageous, Disco Inferno over Bobby Eaton, Kurt Hennig over Al Green, Brian Knobs over Fit Finley, Billy Kidman over Juventud Guerrera, Rey Mysterio Jr. and Brad Armstrong over Kendall Windham and Bobby Duncombe Jr., Johnny Attitude and Barry Horowitz, Jim Duggan and Barry Darsow. No disrespect. That's a lot of matches. That's a lot of talent. But it doesn't feel like there's very much of consequence on that show. When I rattle off that card to you, what's your first impression? What are you thinking about as I run through that list of matches?
Everything I just said a few moments ago, it was filler material.
Yeah.
It was the least we could do to fulfill an obligation and meet its expectations. We met that show's expectations by providing the least amount of resources, whether it be production or talent. It was what it was. It's just filler material.
It's it makes me wonder, because you've been painted with this brush at times. Oh, it's ATM Eric. Oh, the roster's too deep. Oh, we overspent on talent. And we've heard similar things being said about other promotions in 2024. But when I rattled that off, it was sort of overwhelming that, well, there's a lot of guys on this list who are under contract to WCW, and they're not exactly moving the needle. Is there something to less is more in wrestling, or do wrestling fans always want more? Is more?
There's a limit to everything, right? I mean, on the one hand, people that have never been in the position as an executive producer or a Vince McMahon type, or in AEW, Tony Khan gets the last word, right? Vince McMahon got the last word. To a degree, up to a point, I had the last word. That situation and being in that situation teaches you that, yes, from a business perspective, there is a much more efficient way to manage your talent roster. There is, without question. Certainly there was for me. I did not do a good job of managing my talent roster. I learned that the hard way. If you look at Tony Khan, I think he's an example of going to an extreme to have as much depth on his roster as possible. And that's easy to be critical of, because while you're not using that talent, they're frustrated. They're chirping in the background, which gets your audience chirping in the background, which turns into an issue eventually over time if it continues and there's more and more and more of it. So you've got talent discontent, and that weaves its way into your world on a day-to-day basis, generally speaking. You've got talent that people just forget about, which isn't really a big issue for the talent. They think it is, but it's not. It's actually an advantage in some cases. But out of sight, out of mind. And it's easy to be critical of that, but you have to understand that at some point in time, you may need 3, 4, 5 people that you didn't expect all at the same time. You need an inventory of talent that at least you believe it's possible to try to get them to a level where they can replace somebody who is one of your top 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 stars. And you need to have a lot of bodies around that can potentially fill that role, should that role become available through injury or conflict or anything else. So you need to have a fat enough roster that if you've got a gun to your head, you have to make 3, 4, 5 critical, creative decisions because of things that are out of your control. You're going to have to do that. You can't get to the point where I got my A player, I got my B player, and my C player is really not even a D player or an E player. You need some depth. You need to plan for the worst. And unfortunately, that means keeping a lot more people around than it might look like you need on paper.
Let's talk about what we need, which is a shot in the arm creatively, because I'm really scratching my head about the next day. So we just ran through this Thunder taping, or I'm sorry, this Saturday night taping. That's on July 20th, and we're in Madison, Wisconsin. The next day on July 21st, we're just doing a non-televised live event. We might even call it a house show in Peoria, Illinois, in the Civic Center there on July 21st. And there's only 1,830 fans here. The main event is Ric Flair and Sting.
That's a house show?
Yeah.
And I know that you think that sounds bad, but what's Dynamite doing in Texas this week? 1,800 people, 2,000. Their residency in Texas, what's that projected to do?
I'm not sure.
But I mean, my point is, I'm shocked that we could draw 1,800 people to a house show in 1999. You're shocked that it's as bad as it is. Talk about different perspectives.
Well, I'm just saying we're not that far removed. I mean, in January of 99, you put 35,000 people or something in the Georgia Dome. And so here we are 6 months later, 1,800 people will pay to see Sting versus Ric Flair.
Well, it's a little different. I mean, come on. One is a Nitro and the other is a house show. There is a little bit of a difference, but it doesn't change the fact that your point is clear and accurate. The difference between being hot and being not has never been so profound as it was during this period of 1999. Because you could look back a couple months ago, holy shit, do you believe we did that? And now we're like, oh my God, this is where we're at? And that happened over a relatively brief period, very brief period of time.
I do hear you on the sort of eye rolling. Well, a house show's different. It's not TV. Because that was in Peoria. 1,830 is the attendance on July 21st. The next day in Moline at the Mark of the Quad, we're doing a Thunder taping. So it's July 22nd, and we've got 3,560 paying fans, over 6,700 fans in the building. And we've got Ric Flair and DDP and Canyon on one side, standing across from Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, and Perry Saturn. We've also got Booker T wrestling Bam Bam Bigelow. We got Sid Vicious here in a handicap match. We got Buff Bagwell. We do have some television stars here, but I find that interesting that in Peoria, Ric Flair and Sting, house show 1,830, double that for a Thunder TV taping. I didn't hold Thunder in high regard by 1999, but I think the The notion was out there with wrestling fans that live events, house shows, are shows of no consequence, of no substance. And if it's on TV, well, you might see something major happen. You might see a great match or a great angle or a major happening, something of consequence. Do you think that's the difference?
Big part of it, for sure. Big part of it. And there was always, even going back to 1991 when I first got to Turner, different people had different initiatives to try to address that problem. Problem being that the audience had been conditioned to know that nothing really dramatic or exciting is going to happen at a house show. That's saved for pay-per-view. And as a result of the Nitro era, some of the things I was doing differently, occasionally on television, that was always a big problem. And we tried to, I remember under Bill Watts, there was some kind of I don't remember the details of it, but there was a creative plan whereby titles would change hands, world title would change hands in house shows. And of course, there would be a WCW ENG or a news gathering crew there just to happen to catch it so that we could use it on television. But that went on for a long time. It didn't work. People saw through it, obviously. It didn't work to the extent that I think people hoped it would. It wasn't really until Nitro that house shows became a viable business for WCW, because up until that point, drawing 1,800 people for Sting and Ric Flair in a house show would have been huge numbers in 1992 and 1993. That would have been considered a massive success. But after what we went through with Nitro and this incredible rise and then the inevitable fall, thank you, Guy Evans, we were in the middle of that dramatic fall, and it was hard to reconcile.
We should talk a little bit about where we are with the cards too, because the next day we're in Nashville, July 23rd, and we've got 42.73 paid. So way more paid, and it is a house show. Now, maybe this is the difference. Yes, the main event is Sting versus Ric Flair, but the co-main event is Bill Goldberg and DDP.
Well, there you go.
We're going to go on the 24th to Little Rock, Arkansas. Now we're up to 7,358 fans. Even in Jackson, Mississippi, we've got 6,234 fans. Once again, Sting and Flair, Goldberg and DDP. Goldberg is a ticket seller, my man. I mean, we can say what we want about, who wasn't this type of performer or that type of performer or blah, blah, blah. But, dude, the proof's in the pudding right there. You added Goldberg on that card, and we were selling tickets.
He's one of the greatest workers in the business at that time. Now, I said that intentionally because I knew there'd be dead silence. There'd be a look of shock and awe. I don't know if it was shock and awe on your face or as much of what the hell is he talking about?
Well, I thought, every now and again, Eric will say things on this show just to get people talking, and that sounds like one of them right there.
Well, the truth is, and then let's go back to my buddy Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan told me once, and when he said it, it kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized it was true.
I know exactly what you're going to say. He said,
the best worker in the business is the one that makes the most money.
Real Tide.
And by that standard, Bill Goldberg was the best worker in the business. He made a lot more money. As I mentioned a few moments ago, a year and a half before his contract was even set to expire, he forced a renegotiation. That took him from, I don't know what I was paying him under that contract, maybe $500,000 a year, to whatever it ended up being. I don't even remember off the top of my head, 1.5, $2 million a year. And he forced that negotiation because he was the best worker in the business at that time. And I put Will Ospreay and Mercedes Moné right up there with him. Mercedes, for sure, without question, the best worker in the business. Women, anyway. So, yeah, all depends on your perspective, doesn't it? Because everything else is subjective. Everything else is based on, I like tomatoes. Oh, I don't like tomatoes. I like whatever, cucumbers. Oh, I hate cucumbers. I like cauliflower. Fuck, everybody's got a different thing they like. Doesn't matter. It's all your opinion. It's all subjective. The only thing that's not subjective, that's a reflection of how good you are at your job when it comes to entertainment and professional wrestling in this case. It's how much freaking money you make. There you go. End of conversation. See how easy it is to listen to this show, hear little things, innocuous in some respects, but profound in others. It'll stick with you, and you'll be able to carry it forward, apply it to other parts of your life. You can thank me later.
Take a look at what we're seeing here. We got Ben Stiller on Monday Night Raw. Nice little crossover here. He is in the ring having a chat with your old buddy Double J, Jeff Jarrett. And of course, one of the biggest rating getters, one of the ladies dominating the quarter hours, Miss Deborah, is in the ring here. I can only imagine if Jerry Lawler were here, he'd remind you that today's episode is brought to you by Blue Chew. Our next sponsor needs no introduction. You've seen the ads. You've heard us talk about it a million times. And I bet there's a part of you, a big part of you, that wants to try it. You know what I'm talking about. Blue Chew. That's right. This ain't your grandpa's blue pill. This is the one, the OG tablet for better sex. Blue Chew's a unique online service that delivers you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but at a fraction of the cost and in a chewable form. And the process is simple. You'll sign up at BlueChew.com. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part? Well, it's all done online. That means no visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, and no waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take them anytime, day or night. So plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. So discover your options at BlueChew.com. I'm a big believer in this product. I've never put anybody on this product who didn't love it. And if you're looking to add a few more strokes, like Double J is here, well, Blue Chew can help. Blue Chew wants the entire country rock hard. That's what they told me. That's the mission. They will not stop until every man is bricked up like a brick house, until every tent is pitched, until every rod is raised. Discover your options at BlueChew.com. And we've got a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code 83 weeks at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com. The promo code is 83 weeks to receive your first month free. Visit BlueChew.com for more details and important safety information. And we want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. So what do you think, man, of the use of Ben Stiller here? He's got this big movie coming out, and here comes the figure four right in the middle of the ring from Double J, the Intercontinental Champion.
Hey, anytime you can cross promote, get some mainstream advertising, pick up a little PR, get some free mentions in the trades, it's a good day. No harm, no foul. No wrestling characters were killed in the process of making this story. The business will survive.
Yep, it did $33.5 million at the box office. He's here to promote the movie Mystery Men. Did you ever see Mystery Men?
33 million at the box office.
Yeah,
that's horrible. No, I've never seen it, and clearly I'm in the majority.
Now wait a minute, help me understand. Their budget was 68 million, but it made 33 million. And you think that's horrible?
It's not good. Now you pick up a lot on international. I mean, it looks like a horrible loss on the front end, right? But you'll pick up international by the time you're done over a 5-year period. That thing's making money.
What if there were intercompany allocations?
In the movie business, they fucking invented that stuff. They invented stuff that doesn't exist in any other business. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a flop.
Name me all the people that you know that have ever made money on the back end of any deal that was produced in Hollywood.
Jack Nicholson.
Maybe if you're, Steven Spielberg or
yes,
you're somebody that gets really lucky, and if people are willing to give you a bunch of stuff that they would never give you previously because they don't think your project's going to go anywhere, and then it does. Those stories are out there, but my God, they're few and far between.
Let's talk a little bit about some other Hollywood opportunities. On July 26th, the same day that we're watching this Monday Night Raw, the Hollywood Reporter has an article come out, and it mentions that there's going to be a WCW movie. David Arquette is set to star in the movie. And Meltzer would say, people who've read the script say it's awful. Somewhat taken out of the Bret Hart deal about two wrestling fans who find out ahead of time that the promoter is about to screw their favorite wrestler in a match and then try to warn him ahead of time. Rose McGowan plays a Nitro Girl in the comedy written by Stephen Brill, who wrote The Mighty Ducks. Bischoff will be the executive producer, and several WCW wrestlers will appear in the movie. Chat me up about this. I've heard over the years that the character portrayed by Joey Pants originally was an Eric Bischoff character. What can you tell us about this movie and your involvement and what the original idea was and what actually happened?
Well, I was approached, and again, this is Time Warner, Turner merger. I was still of the mind that this was a great opportunity. I was still a deer in the headlights. I was naive. I believed Gerald Levin and Steve Case at a Christmas party at Terry McGurk's house. Terry McGurk was the president of Turner Broadcasting. I was there along with my bride. Ted Turner was there. Brad Siegel was there. Scott Sassa was there. It was the who's who of Turner Broadcasting. I was the token wrestling guy, but Ted liked that, and he liked me. So I got an invite. Felt like a fish out of water, clearly. But I remember standing in the dining room of Terry McGurk's home and looking over and listening to Gerald Levin talk about the strength, the stability, the decades and decades and decades of roots in Hollywood that Time Warner represents, and the entrepreneurial instinct and drive of Ted Turner's Turner Broadcasting, and how bringing that entrepreneurial spirited drive, representative of Captain Outrageous himself, Ted Turner, and how that exists within every employee of Turner Broadcasting. And now to be able to merge these two unique powerhouses into one conglomerate, driven by the entrepreneurial spirit with the strength of old Hollywood. And I'm in the corner going, yeah, bitch. I'm doing that. I'm with it. Bring me more, because I'll take more. I was excited. So when Dino Di Bonaventura, I think that was his name. Di Bonaventura was his last name. I think Dino was his first name. I don't know. Came to me, and Mr. Bonaventura went on to become one of the biggest producers in Hollywood for a long time. Still is. But he came to me, this is one of his first projects. He came to me with the writers and said, hey, I've got this script. We'd like to know if you'd take a look at this script and perhaps if WCW might be interested. I'm flashing back to Terry McGurk's dining room going, here's my shot. I'm going to make this synergy thing that everybody's talking about. I'm going to show everybody how it's done with a major motion picture from Warner Features. Taking my brand, the WCW brand, and the talent within it, and putting them in a major motion picture from a major motion picture company and studio. That sounds like a great idea. And I read the script, and I'm not a good judge. Reading a script is different than reading a book, or, you got to know how to read scripts. You have to be used to it in order to really see the picture in your head the way the script writer wants you to, at least. I read through it. I was, oh, this looks like fun. We could do this. My guys can do all that stuff. There's nothing in here too heavy. These guys are pretty good. Women are good. We're all right. And then there was a chance for me to play myself. And I said, yeah, I think I can do that because the character was written so that I could play it myself. It wasn't written so that it would take somebody with a lot of talent to pull it off. It was written for me, basically me playing me. So that's not a big stretch, even for me. And that was going to be the deal until I got sent home. And then they brought in Joey Pants and whatever. And they went about making a movie.
I appreciate you sharing that because I've always wanted more context about the movie. Is that one of the great missed opportunities, do you think? Like, do you think had it worked out and you got to hang around, you would have enjoyed that experience?
I would have enjoyed the experience because I would have learned. I mean, I love being in any new situation where I'm learning something that I really didn't know or understand. I'm very, very, very curious intellectually by nature. I just got to know how shit works. Now, once I figure it out, I may not be interested in it anymore, but I have to know how things work. And I would have loved being a part of the process. What I was looking forward to more than actually being on camera and seeing myself on a movie screen, what I was really looking forward to was being exposed to the process. Like everything that happens before the actors get to the set. That's what I really wanted exposure to. The rest of it would be fun. And I'm sure I could have learned something as a talent, no doubt. But the really interesting part for me was like, how does this shit all come together? You two guys sat in a room and go, hey, let's do a wrestling movie. Okay, tell me everything that happens after that. Because that's the stuff I want to know. That's the important stuff. So it was a missed opportunity for me personally from that perspective, but the rest of it, yeah, whatever, doesn't matter.
There's another note in the Observer that says the new WCW contracts call for a drop in pay if a wrestler is injured and unable to return after 30 days. The old contracts called for a drop in pay to be put into effect only after an injury that keeps a wrestler on the DL for 90 days. So we're trying to do some cost-cutting measures here. July 26th, what we're watching here on Monday Night Raw is the Fallout episode from the Fully Loaded pay-per-view that happened the day before. The main event in that show was Steve Austin defeating The Undertaker in a first blood match to retain the world title. And the stipulations were that if Austin won, Vince had to leave the WWF. So the show we're watching right now is being recorded, or I guess it's live here at the Gund Arena in Cleveland. It's sold out. 16,340 fans are here in Cleveland, paying $404,000 at the gate. The dark match that night was a young Aaron O'Grady who would go on to eventually become Crash Holly, getting a win or getting some ring time rather with Kurt Angle at the Shotgun tapings or before the Shotgun taping. So it's a dark match for Kurt Angle here. In an alternate universe, would Kurt Angle have been a star in WCW? I mean, obviously his timing would have been such where he would have been there and call it late 99 and through 2000. How different does Kurt Angle's career look if he winds up in WCW and not the WWF?
In 99 or 2000, I think Kurt Angle would have come and gone and nobody would be talking about him to this day. People would have forgotten about him. That's not a good time to emerge as a star in WCW. It was possibly one of the worst times to emerge as a star because nobody would notice or care at that point. We were in such a state of desperation, generally speaking, but because of that pressure and feeling desperate, you're constantly chasing fires to put out, and you don't even have time to recognize what you have, especially something that's emerging, something that would take time and would need to be nurtured. You don't have time to pay attention to that stuff. You're putting out fires. So yeah, if Kurt would have come along in 99, 2000, we wouldn't even know who he is in WCW.
It is crazy to think, if you could have kept the train on the tracks and you debut Goldberg in 97, if you come behind it in 99 with Kurt Angle.
I mean, when you first asked the question, I'm thinking, oh man, that would have been, but now you're extending the window of opportunity.
Yes.
That would have happened. Kurt would have had to happen really around 1998.
Yeah.
Shortly after Goldberg. So those two could kind of be rising at the same time.
Can you imagine?
And then eventually have to face each other. Could have been so awesome. It's like a movie really wrote itself.
We would have gotten Kurt Angle and Bret Hart finally too, which just would have been unbelievable.
Yeah, that would have been fun.
Well, it could have been. Well, the reason we're watching this episode of July 26, 1999 is it sets all kinds of record ratings. Before we get there, though, I want to mention what the ratings were doing that previous weekend. Livewire did a 1.6. Superstars did a 1.7. Sunday Night Heat does a 4.1. But WCW Saturday Night does one of its worst ratings in like its 30-year history. The Andy Griffith Show that was on right before WCW Saturday Night did a 1.6. And then the new content filmed exclusively for TBS started for WCW Saturday Night. And the rating fell to a 1.4. Old reruns of Andy Griffith are outdrawing WCW Saturday Night. I know it. It's not priority. That's the only way to describe the show. It's just not priority. Is there more to it than that? I mean, who was responsible? Is Jimmy Hart completely running this show by this point?
Yeah, Jimmy Hart, and he had a team. It wasn't like Jimmy all by himself, alone in a room with a yellow legal pad. He had a team, and he had resources. He had talent. He looked at. And I think Jimmy had a very, very, still does to this day, had a very, very good perspective of Nitro. It was where some of our younger talent that didn't have a lot of experience in front of a crowd could still get experience in front of a crowd. I mean, it's easy to make fun of and kind of tongue in cheek, but look at 3 Count. That was a Jimmy Hart idea that was born on WCW Saturday Night. There was some great talent in there that went on to become longtime professionals in the industry. So it's not like it was a complete waste of time. There were talent that was on WCW Saturday Night that weren't going to get any time on Nitro or Thunder. It's a great opportunity for them. And if you look at that 1.4 rating, that show probably delivered 2.5 million people. With that rating, maybe a little less, 2.3, pretty accurate. And it cost about $40 to produce. There's almost no cost associated with it. So on a return on investment basis, as just low priority as that show was, the fact that it had such a low cost of production and that it was giving talent an opportunity to work, and in some cases even emerge to become stars, it was still a good effort.
Let's talk a little bit about where we are ratings-wise. The handicap match that we just saw with Kane taking on Big Show and Undertaker hit a record-setting 7.81 quarter hour.
Whoa.
That made 5,938,000 homes.
Wow. That's big, man. That's big.
Yeah, that's pretty big. The overrun here is going to be a 7.52. That's Rock against Chyna and Mr. Ass. The overall rating for Raw is going to be a 7.11 and an 11.6 share. And it's pretty monster. Meanwhile, Nitro is going to peak for its main event. It's Hogan and Sting against Nash and Vicious. It's going to do a 4.08 final quarter hour. It's going to be head-to-head with a 6.58 for the beginning of the Rock's handicap match. It's pretty I mean, listen, it's easy for us to say, "Oh, the WWF's kicking your ass," but my God, a 4.08, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. And again, it's like a Mercedes Monet came out and she's celebrating. Oh, Dynamite's going to surpass the number of episodes Nitro ever did. Like, who gives a shit, right? But it's like a goalpost, and a lot of fans are, a lot of AEW fans are like, I can't believe Dynamite's going to be around longer than Nitro. It's really, it's like a little kid, when you're around like a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, and they're just beginning to learn how to really communicate and try to manipulate and get what they want. And you have this little kid come to you, and they're so earnest. They're trying so hard to be so serious and tell you why they're trying to, that you should do what they want you to do and believe what they want you to believe. And they tell you this long, elaborate story, and they get into the whole facials and they really bring in the drama home. And then you realize they're just babbling. As earnest as they are and as passionate as they are, they're just babbling. And when you look at, especially Mercedes, she comes in with her reportedly, we don't know if it's true, $5 million plus a contract, one of the highest paid women wrestlers. And if you look at the 4 weeks rating for Dynamite prior to her arrival, and you look at her premiere episode, which, by the way, was less than the 4-week average that preceded her arrival, that should tell you something right off the bat. But then you look at how far they've dropped since she came on board. It's embarrassing. Those are the numbers that matter. If I was Mercedes Moné, I'd be terrified to put such a high price tag on myself, demand, and reportedly, we don't know if it's true or not. Maybe it's not true, but reportedly been given creative control. And then to exercise that creative control only to lose ground and lose audience in the process, that's a number that matters. Why are we talking about numbers? You must have brought it up, Conrad.
I brought it up about how they did a 4.08. I mean,
yeah.
I know we're dunking on Nitro and saying, "Oh, the WWF kicked your ass," but it's still such a strong rating.
Yeah, and if you compare, take 1999, which, God, we admit it. I talk about it all the time, all the mistakes I made, all the bad choices I made, all the horrible shit. Okay, check those boxes. Look at WCW's last full year in business, 1999, arguably the shittiest year in WCW, especially under my control. And we still outperform the fuck out of current AEW. In terms of viewers, in terms of ticket sales, certainly merchandise, still outperformed and outperforming current AEW. It's pretty amazing.
I don't know why, but you saying "the fuck" made me laugh. Hey, we got a live studio audience here watching along with us here. This special episode of Monday Night Raw from July 26, 1999. One of those members of the live studio audience is Doug Ritter. And Doug's got a question. You and I are recording early on Wednesday morning. Normally we try to record on Thursday morning, but we're a day early for travel reasons this week. And tonight is a unique circumstance. AEW is going to be live with their Blood and Guts show from the Bridgestone Arena in downtown Nashville. They've been building to this show for a long time. And it's going to be head to head with a rare and very important presidential address. We're going to hear from Joe Biden. We don't talk about politics on this show, but my goodness, with him announcing that he is not going to seek the presidency, or re-election of the presidency, rather, there's going to be a lot of people watching that. And now AEW show is head to head with a major world event. Is there anything AEW can do for this, or do they just have to grin and bear it tonight?
There's nothing they can do about it. Just put on the best show you can put on, go about your business, and wait till next week. I mean, there's nothing creatively they could do. There's nothing promotionally that they're capable of doing with a short of time span. So just roll with it. You know, put out the best show you can and don't even pay attention to it.
We should mention we've got another question here from our live studio audience. Danielle wants to know, were you on board with expanding WCW internationally? Would you have brought up the idea, or was it more of a corporate proposition? You know, we did see at different times when the WWF was sort of on their ass domestically, they just run more international shows where they may struggle to get a high school gym to run a live event in the Northeast. Boy, they could sell out arenas in Europe, especially over in the UK and Germany. And my goodness, they had a lot of success. Was that, how big of a priority was that for WCW?
It was very big. It was top three or four in terms of growth areas. Very, very important, especially, particularly on the TV side. There was a lot of money being made in international television, which was relatively new. You know, international television distribution, especially for Turner, for WCW, was a relatively new market. WWE had done a great job of exploiting that market way, way, way before WCW ever figured out that they should. But once we did, and the product got hotter, which makes it a lot easier, it became a big focus. And I think it represented the largest percentage potential growth of any other business unit within WCW. International represented the biggest upside, I think.
So we're watching the Rock in the main event here with Billy Gunn. Of course, Billy Gunn, the prior month, had won King of the Ring. Let's do some questions here, Eric. We got a bunch of them. Let's hit a few. Eric Burns wants to know, with the Netflix era starting soon, do you think we see some big surprise former WWE star signings? They have a ton of up and coming talent and a stacked roster of current talent, but for what Netflix is paying, I wonder if they will bring in more proven star power. Eric, I'm not even sure who they could bring in. What say you?
Well, guys Cena's on board. Austin's available.
He ain't coming.
I don't know. What'd you say about it?
He ain't coming. Won't see Austin in WWE anymore.
All right. Well, you know something I don't know then.
I know The Rock's on the board.
So there's heat between those two?
I didn't say that.
All right. I got it. Hogan, Flair, Undertaker. You've got enough of that nostalgia legacy talent that are out there that used judiciously and appropriately can bring in that older demo.
But none of those guys are wrestling.
I'm sorry?
Those guys aren't going to wrestle.
Doesn't matter. They're there. They can be part of the show. They can host the show. They can get involved. Undertaker can choke slam somebody, whatever. Just salt and pepper some of that legacy talent in and around the sides. Kevin Nash, same thing. And use it to augment and support your younger talent. I think that'll be a good move for Netflix because I do think they're going to want as many of those older fans back as they can get because they're not as ad dependent. They're subscription dependent. They do ads, obviously, but they're primarily subscription dependent. And the target for that audience is people with disposable income. Those tend to be the older edge of the 25 to 49-year-old demo. So expect to see more legacy talent used judiciously.
I think the only two on that list that you could think you could turn to would be Austin, which I think is going to be a fortune to pull that off, or Goldberg. Like I could see, even though they've tried it before, and I know he said some not so nice things, if you're really looking for that nostalgia guy and you want to do one last program, you know, those are the two guys I think you could reach back and grab, but I don't know who else.
I mean, wrestling wise, I don't see it. I mean, I just don't think it's necessary. I don't think anybody wants. I mean, look, Would I love to see Steve Austin wrestle? Sure. If it was Stone Cold Steve Austin from, 2000, 2002. But do I want to see the guy that I was in the ring with in 2005 at No Way Out? I don't want to see that guy, because that guy he could have gotten hurt seriously. So, Steve Austin brings so much to the table. Just charisma, and he'll connect people to the product in a way that very few other people can, and he doesn't have to get in the ring to do it. That's how great of a character he was. So I do hope we see him and utilize him the right way, because he could just add so much to the format.
Eric, the episode of Monday Night Raw has gone off the air, and of course, there's extra attitude that was available, so you could see, once the live broadcast was over, hey, what was still happening in the arena. So that's pretty cool that we've got access to that. But I did want to ask a couple more questions that have come up that are pretty topical, and then we'll move on. I don't know if you've seen this, but it got a little bit of attention recently. Adam Mercer says, Lenita Erickson recently claimed that you were trying to buy WCW with Fusion, and she nixed a potential TV deal with Fox. She also said you'd never stood a chance of getting a deal, because if anyone did their due diligence and looked into the company accounts, they'd see how much money you lost the company due to financial mismanagement and handing out crazy guaranteed contracts. What is your response? Have you been tagged or seen that? I guess Lenita Erickson recently did an interview, and maybe she was telling a different story than you.
Somebody sent it to me. This is about as low rent as it gets. And to comment on, I don't know, Lenita Erickson, it's below even me. That's bad. You know that you are a lower life form when I won't even take the time to comment on you.
Bradley Rice says SummerSlam is 2 weeks out, and there's still more than 7,000 seats remaining to be sold. Who and or what can they book to push them over the finish line, Eric?
I don't know. I don't do the fantasy booking thing. I'm sure they're going to sell out.
Really? You think they'll get there?
When is the date?
It's 2 weeks away.
And what's the venue?
It's a big venue. They're running outdoors.
Yeah, but which one?
The stadium.
All right, then yeah,
where the Cleveland Browns. It's an NFL.
Oh, okay, yeah, they'll do fine. They'll do fine. They're gonna sell out. Don't worry about it.
Well, I don't know. 7,000 it's a lot. Feels like a lot.
Where are they at right now?
7,000 away. We enjoyed watching this old episode of 1999 Monday Night Raw. Did you see anything in there? I mean, there's a lot of star power. There's a lot of story. The presentation, I still think the presentation of WCW stands up more. Like if I go back and I watch Nitro, I just think I prefer that presentation and formatting over the Monday Night Raw format from this era. I just think it stands the test of time better. Did anything stand out to you in our playback today?
Not really. And I'll be honest with you, I was kind of engrossed in what we were talking about, and I was only half-assed paying attention to it. Nothing really stood out to me. And of course, with the audio down, you don't get the full benefit of it either. I agree with you. I think Nitro, the presentation of Nitro kind of really found the sweet spot between high production values and I want to feel like I'm there. And I think for the most part, we were able to check that box pretty consistently. But no, I didn't really see anything that stood out to me.
Well, next week we'll take a look at Monday Nitro, see what stands out from August 2nd, 1999. There's no Tony Schiavone. Harlem Heat is back together. The Revolution is dubbed. You're on commentary. Chad Brock is here. What? Chris Benoit versus DDP. What about Dennis Rodman? ICP. Sid is going to team with Rick Steiner in the main event against Goldberg and Sting and so much more. And that's happening next week here on the program. Join us live at 83weeks.com. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications bell. You don't want to miss us when we're live. And we'll see you sooner rather than later, right here at 83weeks.com. SaveWithConrad.com.
I'm Nick Castillo from Waterville, Ohio. I've listened to several of his podcasts for a few years and have always heard the ads for Save with Conrad. And my wife and I were looking to refinance, and we had looked into a couple different options. And then I had remembered one of the ads and contacted you guys, and here we are. We had some debt that we accumulated, and we wanted to pay it down, get everything in under a much better, more manageable APR. So smooth. I've never had anything finance go that easy. We got a chance to work with Francis and Larry. They made everything comfortable. They were very personable. They were on top of everything. They made sure we were on top of everything. They were with us every step of the way, kind of guiding us. So like I said, I've never had an experience that went that smooth. Right off the bat, we saved at least $250 a month. Within a couple of months, we'll probably be at the $400 to $500 mark a month. I'm Nick Castillo from Waterville, Ohio, and I've saved over $400 a month with SaveWithConrad.com.
NMLS number 32416, Equal Housing Lender, SaveWithConrad.com.